We've played the Switch 2, and here's 5 things that genuinely surprised us about it.
Oh, yeah.
And I am in Andy's house.
Yay!
Yeah, so we went to the Switch 2 preview event literally yesterday.
Yep.
I don't know when this video goes out, but for us it was yesterday.
For us, it was yesterday.
I've ruined time traveling yet again. And there was a lot to take in. It was a mega event. We wanted to do like a quick, short, sharper video on like 5 big things that really surprised us from being hands-on with it. All right, okay, it's a great quick interlude. We have to say a massive thank you to, of course, GENKI. GENKI made this possible. They made it possible for us to go up to London to this event.
Thank you so much.
And they're, of course, sponsoring this video. I want to say a massive thank you to them, but I also want to make sure that you're aware that GENKI are going to be the place to go for Switch 2 accessories.
Yes.
Particular, the case.
The Sire Carry.
Sire Carry,
yes.
is going to fit the Switch 2 already.
Oh, yes.
If you're unaware, GENKI did loads of like promo of Switch 2 accessories before the Switch 2 was even announced.
They did, cheeky.
I liked it that they were getting in hot water for that. Absolutely amazing company. They're going to make some really cool stuff. They make some cool accessories that we've covered for like LX and Steam Deck as well. Things like the save point and the turbocharger. They do a cool 8-bit Do Pro controller as well. Loads of really cool stuff from GENKI. I'm talking a lot and Andy's not.
I'm super hyped to get my hands on the Switch 2 accessories from GENKI. I can't wait to show all of you in dedicated reviews when they come out. And yeah, so far I love the carry case is my favourite.
Yeah,
so the Sire carry is my favourite.
We're going to be doing loads more with them, and we want to thank them for supporting us.
Thank you.
This. And you can thank them by checking out the link below to all of GENKI's cool stuff.
Oh yeah.
Let's jump straight into the big one, and that's the screen. If you're worried about it not being an OLED, we were worried about it not being an OLED.
Oh yeah.
Don't be worried.
Do not be worried.
Amazing.
It's literally incredible because we got ushered in, played immediately on like a TV, and we were thinking, okay. And then they were like, oh, and by the way, here's handheld mode. We were like, okay. So they're like, yeah, play the game, and we're like, no.
Let's want to see the screen.
So we're like holding it like at angles, and you can hold it like paper thin, and it's crystal clear.
It doesn't wash out at all.
No washout.
So we can't figure out what LCD they're using here.
No.
Whether it's mini LED, they wouldn't tell us. In fact, they were like, we can't tell you.
Yeah, they were like, please refer to the Nintendo website.
Yeah. So whatever it is they're using is incredibly clever because you get the viewing angles.
Yeah.
Well, it's the whole viewing angle.
Yeah, the viewing angle is perfect, and it does not drop the color. Like the saturation doesn't drop.
So there's a lot of like HDR trickery going on as well.
Yes.
They're using HDR really well in it.
Yeah, and it's very bright.
Yes.
I immediately said, what brightness setting is this set at? And they said they couldn't tell us.
Yeah.
So I would have assumed it was 100%.
Max. It was going to be max brightness, and the first game you get to play handheld was Mario Kart World.
Yeah.
It's obviously very vibrant, lots of dynamic range in it. So they're using HDR really effectively in that.
Yes.
To almost simulate how an OLED feels with that really like vibrant contrast that you get.
Yeah, it actually looked like that. But
it did, yeah.
Mario Kart, like you said, is a lot of trickery because it's one of those games where it's so colourful and bright. There's not a lot of darkness to be able to see any blacks that aren't black. But I would say because of that HDR trickery, where the highlights are so high peak brightness, it feels like an OLED to look at.
Yeah, but bottom line is, if you're worried about it being a dull, washed out LCD panel, don't worry.
It is not at all. It looks
Incredibly
fantastic.
premium.
And the size of that screen,
huge.
Perfect.
It's huge.
8 inches, 7.9 inch.
Well, as I've said before, 8 inches is the sweet spot.
Oh, yeah. But I've never held an 8 inch in my hands before.
That's not.
So holding one of them, it shocked me in a good way.
All right, and talking of holding things in your hand that shock you, ergonomics of this thing is the next thing.
That is one of the first things before I even noticed the screen.
Yes.
And it was you that pointed it out.
Yeah, it's beautifully sized. The increased kind of depth that you get from it, from those longer Joy-Cons and longer screen now, means that it holds perfectly in your hand. I used to really struggle, and I'm sure you did. I know you did as well.
Oh yeah.
That when you're holding the Switch before, your little finger would cradle underneath.
Yep, you'd have to like prop it up on your pinkies, and for extended periods of time,
it was just start really
horrible.
hurting.
Yeah, it was really get crampy.
The first thing I noticed is like that's not happening anymore. You can't get your little finger underneath, let alone. So the ergonomics they've really thought about. I was worried that it was going to be too big.
I was thinking that because obviously I've ordered Christina one, and she has baby hands. I'm not even joking, like literal baby hands. And I was thinking, she's not going to be able to hold this thing. And when I was holding it in just shock, like, I'm holding a Switch too. And you were like, oh, I'm not having the pinky, grab. And I went, hang on a second. I didn't even naturally reach to, because it's so thin and wide, like the surface area, it doesn't feel heavy.
That's the really shocking thing. It's
really weird.
Sorry to interrupt.
Go for it.
The thinness part of it, because it's so big, you've got an 8-inch screen, these big Joy-Cons, but it's the same thickness as the original Switch. It suddenly feels like it's really thin.
It does, yeah. It
weirdly
feels
thin.
Super thin, but that extra surface area spreads the weight perfectly. Unlike like the Ally X, where it's a very fat, small area where it does feel heavy. This felt amazing, and the fact that you're not resting your pinkies means that you're holding it comfortably. But the biggest thing was the triggers and the bumpers
100%.
are arced all the way down the sides of the Joy-Cons. And I was like, oh, so this is how they're accommodating small hands. And I thought, well, maybe they're not very good at actuating on the sides. And I run my finger across the entire arc. They actuated perfectly. I don't know how they're doing it, but it perfectly actuated.
Evenly actuated all around as well. And considering it's going around almost a 90-degree bend, it's quite odd that they've managed to do that.
Yeah, same with the trigger, which was really weird. The triggers were bent around too, and they felt brilliant. So if you've got tiny hands, don't worry about the size.
There was also this kind of... I'm going to go on to like the feel of it in a minute, but there was like this kind of texturized. It felt different.
And I'm cautious of saying this because people are going to think this is not very nice, but it felt almost like it had a rubber coating over the entire thing. But not in a bad way.
It wasn't sticky.
It wasn't a
rubber.
Horrible rubber. It was like a premium feeling texture.
We touched on it a minute ago. The third really big thing that surprised me straight off playing Mario Kart, because the first one you were playing with the Joy-Cons with the center attachment as a controller, and then the second time you're playing just handheld. So you're noticing this both times, was how good the buttons, bumpers and triggers are.
They feel fantastic.
Insanely good.
Like the quality level is jumped massively compared to the Switch and the Switch OLED.
I think everyone's kind of level criticism of the original Switch was replace the Joy-Cons straight away. They're too small, got rubbish joysticks, the buttons are horrible. So everyone was just buying alternatives, bit Noblepad or whoever. But anyway, the buttons on this one, firstly, the actual face buttons, to start there, how they've implemented... I guess it's like a haptic feedback.
Yeah, this is a tricky one because you mentioned it. And your initial thought was mechanical.
It's like mechanical. It's got a click to it.
It felt like a click. And now I was like, I think it's a membrane on the face buttons, but it did seem on Mario Kart, we weren't able to back out of Mario Kart, so we were just like in the game. But it did feel like almost a haptic feedback when you pressed the face button, similarly to how the Steam Deck touchpads feel.
Exactly that. That's such a good analogy. Yes, exactly that. That artificial click, but it's done so naturally, and a combination of it being, it probably is a membrane button, but a really tight one, like you were saying yesterday. That combination makes it feel like a mechanical switch going on.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
Really lovely. Yeah. The bumpers and the triggers, I'm certain are mechanical.
Yeah, to me they felt like actual mechanical switches, like micro mechanical switches.
Because there was later on in the event you could play and hold with a Switch 2 that switched off, and you could take the Joy-Cons off and all the rest of it. So the first thing I went to was like, I'm going to press the buttons here, see if it's still haptic.
Yeah, which they weren't.
They weren't, yeah. But the shoulder buttons definitely still were clicky.
Yes.
I feel like super instantly responsive, like a mechanical switch.
Really nice.
They've done something very different to all of the buttons there that they've not talked about.
Yeah.
It's genuinely surprising.
Yeah, it actually felt premium.
Yeah.
They felt like pro Joy-Cons.
Well, and that leads us on really, it's a really smooth segue to our fourth thing that really surprised us, and that is the feel, the premium feel of the whole thing.
Yes.
Suddenly the Switch feels like a genuine premium product.
Yeah, this feels like a Switch Pro, which we would expect from the successor. Right?
Yeah.
Like that, again, that thinness to the whole thing and the spreading out of the weight, it didn't feel like side heavy or like top heavy. It feels very well balanced in your hand.
That's a minute ago we were talking about that finish that they've given it to it. It's almost rubberized, but it's not. It's really hard to explain.
I feel like that's doing a disservice to it.
It is, yeah.
But it feels nice in the hand. Like it's grippy. It didn't feel like it's going to slip out your hand if you just hold it with one hand.
Really simple quality of life improvements as well, beyond the size and the ergonomics improvements. Things like the game cart holder.
That was really impressive, and I didn't see anyone fiddling with that.
No.
But we were like pulling it open.
Where you put your game cards in, obviously before it was this weird like rubber grommet-y kind of thing.
Plastic.
Yeah. Float around almost. It
was rubbish. And it didn't move very much on the original Switch and Switch OLED. Yeah. You didn't have much room to play to actually get carts in.
On the Switch 2 now, it's like an actual hinged, and it's got inside almost like a metallic holder for the game card as well.
Yeah, it's got like a metal piece that goes over the top of the card.
Very premiumly
and it
done.
Clicks in.
Yeah.
And I kept clicking it down because it felt nice. It didn't feel like you're pushing rubber grommets in.
Yeah.
It actually like clicks into place.
The kickstand is a massive improvement.
Oh yeah.
Like huge.
It's got the same hinges as the Switch OLED.
Yeah.
But the actual like thing, instead of it being a big paddle like the Switch OLED, or the horrible plastic thing on the original Switch, this is like a big sort of like chin.
Yeah.
And it was, I think it was metal. It felt sturdy.
Yeah, incredibly well done. And then the other one, of course, when you're talking about the premium feel of it, the Joy-Cons, it feels like how Joy-Cons should have always been.
Yes.
The magnetic click in and out thing.
Oh, so perfect.
So much better than the rails.
The rails are horrible. They always felt grindy.
Yeah.
And it just didn't feel very nice. This is so perfect. And that hinge, like the removal mechanism. Because I was thinking, if you're like a child, are you going to have to like He-Man it off?
Yeah.
But just the smallest of clicks and it just pops out.
Yeah.
Like it was a beautiful design.
Yeah. I want to give a quick shout out as well to things like the mouse mode and stuff. I think that's incredibly well done. We're going to do whole videos on that.
We're going to deep dive on those.
That was definitely a surprise how well they've implemented that.
We tried to test everything. Instead of trying to play every game and gush about the games, we were trying to focus on hardware, focus on what's new, like the camera and the mouse mode and pretty much everything else like that. And obviously we'll let you know our thoughts.
And the thing is, we've got years to play the games, but you've only got a short amount of time to decide on the hardware.
Absolutely.
And that's the kind of the final part of the final thing that really surprised me is the performance of the hardware. That was the big thing I was looking for.
Yep.
How is it playing the games handheld?
Yep.
And how is it playing them on the TV as well? And what's the performance like of it? Wow.
Yeah, really, really impressive.
My takeaway is we were on the train coming home from it. I was like, what it feels like they've built is an Xbox Series S that you can play handheld.
That's basically
It's kind of that level.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I totally agree.
And Series S is, yes, it's not like bleeding edge. It's not going to outperform your PC.
No.
Obviously.
Yes.
But if you want to play cool console games quickly and you want access to all the Nintendo IPs and you want to play handheld and you don't want any faff, Nintendo have just supplied it. They've just done that.
Yeah. The easy like hybrid Switch like is just so good that you can just pull it out. The first game we ran to, which I'm sure we'll like talk about more, but was Hogwarts because no one was there.
Yeah, there's no queue on it.
No queue. It was only docked that we played. But it felt super smooth.
Yeah.
It really did. And compared to the Switch 1 version, it looked like going from a Game Boy game to a console
things
game.
like the draw distances, the frame rate. It felt like it was about 40 FPS, that.
Yeah.
The guy there wasn't sure if it was 30 or 40.
He said that he thought it was 30, and if it was, then it was super smooth. And I asked them if the TVs were VRR. They couldn't say.
Yeah.
They didn't know, but I imagine they were.
Yeah, it's a distinct possibility. But a lot of the games that we played, I think like Metroid Prime 4, the performance of that was incredible.
That was amazing.
But that was definitely running a 1080 at a really high frame rate.
Yeah, that was on the 1080, 120 mode.
Yeah, it felt like it. And that was to showcase the mouse mode, because the mouse mode was super responsive, high frame rate, makes loads of sense. But just in general, the high quality performance, it felt like we were getting the kind of this gen console performance, but with a device that can play handheld.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which is kind of insane.
Yeah, it's insane.
For Nintendo.
Yeah, it is insane. There is one thing that was noticeable in the performance, but I want to save that as a teaser for another video. So make sure you subscribe, like this video as well.
Yes, and whilst you're down and digging around, make sure you leave a comment below asking a question what you want to know about the Switch 2. Maybe we can answer that because we've got a lot of Switch 2 videos coming up. So make sure you subscribe to watch all of those. Yeah. And maybe even become a member so you can ask us questions in Discord too.
Do it.
So until next time.
Bye.